Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's program. Because, hey, it's Friday. Everyone, I know, what a relief, but... ladies and gentlemen, we have Ralph Bond with us. He is our science and tech trends correspondent, and he'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk about 4 different stories, as he does every Friday. And, you know, they're always fun, everything from science, medical. There's one about, fixing air pollution, stuff like that. Things that are really going to make you feel better because, while there's a lot of things wrong, there's a lot of very, very smart, dedicated people trying to make things right. So, never forget that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Computer America program, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, and really just everything that we do. You may notice that we still have our Twitter feed. I don't know what the etiquette is on if I need to start rebranding everything, our Twitter social media or our X social media. I'm kind of hoping he just kind of waves his hands and just says, ladies and gentlemen, this is all just a joke. It's a big joke. It's a big publicity stunt. It's going back to Twitter. I don't know. I hope, but soon I'm going to have to probably make that jump. But either way, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. And and by the way, at the top, he did not rebrand to X. It just says Ralph Bond, and Ralph Bond segments are all included right there, including the show notes for past shows and all of his recent videos. So with that being said, welcome back onto the program, Ralph. How you been?
Great, and you nailed it on the head. Lots of crazy, negative, scary news this week, but you've come to the right place if you want to be uplifted with positive, exciting, and hopeful news in the areas of robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it. We're going to be talking about all these kinds of things every Friday, and come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes for today's stories, because we'll have links and pictures and you can dive deeper into it, because what Ben and I do each Friday is just give you highlights from 4 exciting stories that we find, and then we share them with you in a condensed way that's very humanized and easy to digest.
Definitely. And spoiler alert, Ralph finds all of them himself. Don't let him give me any credit for this. But ladies and gentlemen, they are really fun stories, and they're really, really cutting edge, which sometimes we talk about products that are just released. Not everyone wants to go back and listen to our segment with Apple about the Apple Watch 2, because we're on like 6 now. Sometimes our segments aren't exactly the most past and future friendly, but with Ralph segments, a lot of this is research and stuff that is, 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Although, you're going to see with some of the stories today, they're going to start affecting you immediately. But, it's always worth a gander to go out there and find past shows if you want some more in your day. So with that being said, the show notes, by the time everyone hears this, will be up on the site. And Ralph, I think we start with story number 1.
Yeah, this is a great example of, if you've ever doubted the value of NASA and all the decades of research and money we have as a nation have put into NASA, just Google sometime or do a search saying commercial products that were derived from NASA technology, and you'll just be blown away by this stuff. In fact, I hope I'm not wrong, but I think even Velcro came from NASA, I think.
Ballpoint pens, Velcro, yeah, there are a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff, yeah. Anyway, this first story kind of fits into that mode. Sustainable airless tires adopt NASA technology. Got this from the Reuters news service. And if you have the show notes, and please come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes to see the pictures, right, and see the links, because you can see what these tires look like. They're showing 2 prototype automobile tires, but let's get into the story here. A little setup here on what's the problem. Scrap tires are a major environmental problem worldwide due to their bulk and the chemicals they can release. And here's some more factoids I looked up to kind of augment what's the problem. According to a Federal Highway Administration Research and Technology report, approximately, get ready for this, 280 plus million used tires in the United States alone are discarded each year. Only about 30 million of these tires are retreaded or reused, leaving the remaining 250 million scrap tires to be managed. I'll do a little side note here for a second. At my local Home Depot, and we also have a Lowe's too. It's funny because they're back to back. They're literally right side by side in our town. It's funny. Anyway, you can buy bags of shredded automobile tires that are dyed brown to look like wood chips or something to put in your garden beds. Yeah, mulch. They look like mulch. So that's one example of how they can use these tires. But anyway, 250 million scrap tires that are still left over every year, folks, to be somehow managed.
Yeah, and it really shows like just how little this, reason is known. Because you just said retread the tires. I didn't even know you could retread tires. So yeah, apparently that's an option I never even knew about.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I'm an old guy. And I can tell you that back in the late 60s, early 70s and so forth, and early 70s when I was driving and we were on a real tight budget, a lot of times you would go and buy retread tires. It was a different world anyway. So another issue is when tires contact the road, tiny particles are abraded and emitted. That's, of course, how your tires ultimately wear down. Unfortunately, that problem is set to become bigger with electric vehicles, given the extra weight of an EVs due to their batteries, right? So that's another issue that's going to wear these tires down faster. It's a real problem. So when regulators turning their scrutiny to tire pollution, tire makers are under pressure to practically, no pun intended, reinvent the wheel. Okay, so the solution. You step back and say, what can we do better? How about permanent tires based on the airless tires NASA developed for its moon rovers? And if you have the show notes or come out to get the show notes, you can see the picture of the tires that we're talking about here in terms of the prototypes. So now a Los Angeles-based company is bringing the technology back down to earth in the hopes of making punctures, and I added, and excessive tire waste, a thing of the past. According to the SMART, it's all caps, SMART, Smart Tire Company in Los Angeles, the tires they are creating based on NASA's moon rover tires are airless, durable, and will never go flat, making them more sustainable and more robust than traditional all-rubber tires. And by the way, today's tires are not just all rubber. That's a little bit of a misnomer there. They have other elements combined in. Now, these tires, these prototype tires, have a springy mesh design made of a shape memory alloy. Shape memory alloy. Wait a minute, time out. What is a shape memory alloy? I went out and did a little extra research. In metallurgy, a shape memory alloy is an alloy that can be deformed when cold, but returns to its pre-deformed shape when heated. It's also known by other names such as memory metal, memory alloy, smart metal, smart alloy, and even muscle wire.
So the same properties of like a foam ball. You know, you crush a foam ball in your hand and it pops back up to, be a foam ball, but in metal, which is much harder.
Yeah. Memory shapes, memory alloys. Yeah, you're right. Many, many different. Well, you think about, I've got a foam topper on our bed, and when you get off of it, it eventually, expands back up to its original shape. So that's another example of a memory material, if you want to call it that. Well, here's a quote from Earl Cole, co-founder and CEO of the Smart Tire Company in Los Angeles. He notes, quote, "What makes shape memory alloy so special is it's like a super elastic material. It's a very flexible, lightweight metal that's elastic like rubber, but strong like titanium." And Mr. Cole goes on to say, so you can actually deflect or bend a tire way down to the rim, and it will just always bounce back to its original shape. He goes on to say, so you're able to use this as a structural element in a tire now. so you don't need any pressurized air. So that means with an airless tire, punctures don't matter. Punctures aren't going to happen, right? That's my add-on. It would never, ever get a flat, so your tire can last the life of your vehicle. Wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. But there's a little reality check coming up here in a second. On smart tires, here comes that reality check. On smart tires, the only rubber part is the tread. In this case, the thin sheath-like outer part that grips the road. And if you have the show notes, you can see the picture, you get it right away. And that outer sheath-like coating or a rubber part can be replaced without throwing away the whole tire. That's why they call it a permanent tire, but it still does need to be tuned up at certain intervals. Okay, so that's the reality check. But needless to say, I still think this is a great idea. The company says already tens of thousands of people worldwide have already joined the waiting list for their first commercial product, which will not be for automobiles, but will be an airless smart bicycle tire, which they plan to launch in the spring of 2024. So a little over a year from now. Wow. I just think this is a fun thing. And I love, again, another great example of how NASA technology is finding its way into the real world and benefiting us in amazing ways.
And you know, I remember talking to you know, probably just someone who came on to help NASA, although I think they all had degrees, but either way, I remember talking to NASA at CES about this, and you know, they had a big poster of like this up on you know, up at the booth that shows that, you know, old tires, they were also airless, but they were of this design that was like a super I think it was actually steel. It was like it was steel, and you can see that over time as they kind of roll over the Martian soil, which you think is, you know, just a big dust bowl. There's actually rocks that'll puncture. It'll you know, make the whole thing kind of go. You know, Ralph, you can see the picture. Awful. You know, and so this was their solution, was to go back to this design here, which let them kind of go over rocks and be deformed and pop back out, because super rigid just wasn't working. They needed something a little bit different. So very, very cool. And I had another little add-on about this that I totally forgot. No. Personal anecdote. I had a family member that she was at work, and she thinks she saw someone messing with her tires. She was driving. Luckily, she's fine. But after, you know, so far, both tires blew out on the same side. And when the cops got there to report the incident, they said it looked like they were punctured, stabbed. You know, they were messed with. Someone stabbed her tires. Hey, you know, something like this wouldn't even be possible. So, you know, and of course, I'm not saying you know, this would prevent all intentional, you know, messing with it, but it would stop a lot of the accidents out there, Ralph. You know, not just, you know, occasional kind of wearing down of the tires, but also, you know, accidents, incidents, you know, something on the road, you hit it. It's okay. Your tire's going to bounce right back. You may have to replace the tread, but, you know, your tire's fine, because punctures don't really affect it the way that they do modern tires. So, you know, and there's a lot of benefit.
Oh, yeah. And Ben, a lot of times we do these stories and then we start speculating on how this could be applied. Automobiles, regular automobiles, bicycles, that's great. How about all-terrain vehicles, military and or civilian? How about robotic drones having these kinds of tires, as it were? Could be a huge advancement when you go into terrain that's unpredictable and possibly full of sharp rocks or other debris, right? I mean, there's so many possibilities, and I salute this company in Los Angeles for getting this off the ground, and it's going to be fun to watch it as a trend.
And then the last little tidbit, because way at the beginning you said, you know, NASA was a good investment. If you count the funding, just for a little factoid for everyone, if you count the funding, so for every dollar spent on the Apollo program, we received about $7 in economic revenue, essentially, you know, just people, you know, going off the technology, building new things, starting new companies, stuff like that. But Ralph, if you go by today's standards on space development, it's $40 for every $1 spent. So, you know, there's about $70 billion in economic output for every $7 billion that we put out in state and federal funding. So, the space program has been worth it the entire time, and it's only getting more so. So,
yeah,
very, very cool from NASA. Yep. So, story number 1. Story number 2. We're going to get back to GE, an old favorite, just like NASA, GE, an old favorite. And, I think I've heard some very much more simplistic views on how to fix the air. Vacuuming the air might be a new level, but I'm sure there's some very smart science behind it. But it seems so simple, Rob. Like, why don't we just clean the air? Just vacuum the air. How hard can it be? Let's find out.
Well, yeah. And what's interesting here, we talk about trends. That's my job, is to look for stories that give us a forecast of where we're going. What if you had a huge, giant international corporation put its mind and attention to the task of vacuuming carbon dioxide out of our atmosphere? Because there have been lots of smaller startups, lots of other research teams doing exactly this through other techniques and a variety of ways of doing it. The key to this story, folks, is this giant corporation, General Electric, saying, hey, we're going to develop something. We're going to see if we can deploy it and scale it up because we have the resources to do that. That's the key here. And with all that build up, here's the headline. GE has a wild plan to vacuum air pollution right out of our skies. Here's how the mind-blowing idea would work. I got this from an absolutely wonderful website, an outlet that I discovered a few months ago called The Cool Down, kind of a funny name, a story by Nick Paschal in this case. I also went out and looked at GE's own website, and there's also a YouTube video you can see. If you come to the show notes, go to computeramerica.com, get the show notes for today. You can get all these links and pictures and everything else. So here we go. It's been decades since General Electric made vacuums, but now it's getting back into the game. Only this time, the company will be vacuuming carbon pollution out of the air. Recently, GE announced the successful test of its direct air capture prototype. So, folks, we're talking about prototype at this point, and is planning larger scale demonstrations in 2024. If the company can successfully scale its direct air capture system, it could be a massive weapon in the fight against our overheating planet. All right, wait a minute. What is direct air capture? And their video is really good, by the way. Mm-hmm. Direct air capture uses chemical reactions to remove carbon dioxide from the air. When air moves over the chemicals in the system, it selectively traps the carbon, leaving the other parts of the air to pass through. Once the carbon is successfully sucked out of the air and removed from the chemicals, typically by applying heat, it can be injected deep into the ground in geologic formations, never to be seen again, or used in products like concrete or plastic, which I think is interesting, that would hold on tight to that carbon for a very long time. By the way, this bit about injecting carbon dioxide into geologic formations, personally, I kind of squirm a little bit on that one. It's like, I'd rather see if we can get more creative.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like fracking, but
yeah,
that's kind of the idea. Yeah, it is if you find a big bedrock, a big chunk of rock, you drill down and you inject it into the rock, sort of a new volcano short of a new volcano forming. It's going to stay there. So I think that's what they mean. They're not just like, just pump it into the ground. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be a little bit safer, but yeah, using it in concrete, that sounds better.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, let's see if we can find a creative way to use this instead of just, taking the lazy, easy way out of shoving it into the earth. And, again, Ben, I'm not an expert in this field, certainly not, but you have to wonder over time, could this come back to bite us in the behind centuries later? Who knows?
The capturing in the ground? The only reason I think that they propose it is because we have the infrastructure in place to do it. Because right now, we don't exactly recycle our nuclear or spent nuclear fuel. We take it into a cave, we take it to old mining sites, whatever, somewhere where hopefully there's no water, and we store the old nuclear reactor fuel. So they're essentially saying we're going to do with the captured CO2 with what we do with the spent fuel. So Same thing.
Good comparison. Yeah, very, very good comparison. Well, I'm going to give you some more about direct air capture and how it can fight climate change. Let's take a step back for a second, a little more of a macro view. So the concentration, and this is sort of stuff we've all heard so many times before, but the concentration of atmospheric carbon pollution has increased by 47% since the beginning of the industrial age. And the author of the article says, and if that stat isn't crazy enough, get ready for this, half of the increase in the last 300 years has happened since 1980. Oh my God. Okay.
That's a lot.
So, Ben, as we all know, transition to clean energy like solar and wind and electric vehicles, of course, is vital to reducing air polluting gases. But just slowing down how much carbon we pump into the air isn't going to be enough to solve the problem. We all know this. And that's where direct air capture comes in to help. Direct air capture, and this line from the article, I couldn't support more vigorously. Direct air capture is one of many solutions needed. And Ben, you and I have talked about this. I want to segue just for a moment. When we talk about these CO2 fighting technologies, and there's so many out there right now, I don't think anybody in the scientific community or in the research community is saying, this is the one thing that's going to solve it all, right? Remember the story about the super white paint? And the was sort of the joke, well, you'd have to paint the entire surface of the United States to really have a meaningful...
Right.
No, folks, it's one part of the puzzle. This could be another part. So I'm going to get off my soapbox and get back to the story. So direct air capture is one of many solutions needed to pull enough carbon out of the atmosphere to slow the devastating impacts of planet warming gases. Unlike other forms of carbon removal, like reforestation, direct air capture uses relatively little space and has few restrictions on where it can be located. That's one of the super encouraging parts of this. Today, the direct air capture space or community is mostly full of startups and incumbent energy companies. And again, as we said at the outset, but a behemoth, a giant international corporation like GE has the ability to produce direct air capture systems on a large enough scale to make a real difference. Now, in the show notes, we're not going to go through this. I stripped out the transcript from the video that GE put together for this. And so if you want to come out to the show notes and do an optional, I call it optional geek out footnote, I have key points from the script of their video. If you want to dive in deeper to understand technically how their system works, it's just a wonderful technology advancement. And I salute GE for getting into this. And it's an indication that major international corporations are more and more every day getting into the fight against climate change.
So the thing that makes me think why private companies are going to get into this, and I'm one of those cynics. Capitalism doesn't always meet up with morals and ethics, but I will say. There was a little factoid, Ralph, about the extreme heat in Texas and Florida and places in the South, and the economic impact of that. And I think I remember off the top of my head was like $9.1 billion in lost economic activity. People not going outside, not shopping, workers not working as effectively. Just how everything just gets a little bit worse every degree above a certain amount that it gets. And Ralph, I'm thinking, that's a trend, and if we can quantify that, global warming is costing us $10 billion, a year in reduced economic output or whatever.
Right.
At some point, that number, Ralph, is going to translate into money that, either a federal program, state program, whatever it may be, is going to say, we could pay GE $2 billion and it would, kind of help the effects of this. And, you start to get that cost analysis, I think, that, it's going to be worth it, in the long term, in the long term or the short term, that, it's going to be worth it to start investing in these things, not just for the health of the planet, which that should be the priority, but whatever. But economically, it's only going to make sense. So I feel like, Ralph, that's why we're going to see GE get into this. We're going to see, other large
Sure,
companies do the exact same thing, because eventually it's not just going to be something that's good. It's going to be something that's profitable as well. And that's when you could really see some change, is when, it kind of works out on both sides of that equation. So fingers crossed.
As you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, there are so many industries with the reality of climate change, and you take the fossil fuel industry, okay? They simply have to figure out a way to transition to a future where pulling fossil fuels out of the ground is just not going to be a long-term reality for humanity, right? So if you're a corporation, if you're a fossil fuel corporation, and the Saudis, I think, are pretty good at this, they're looking ahead and saying, okay, wait a minute, maybe we can get into this carbon monoxide, or CO2 extraction from the atmosphere business, right? So looking at technologies that can be a good substitute or replacement for fossil fuels so that we make the full transition ultimately.
Yep. No, there's of course the obvious fact that fossil fuel companies are some of the biggest investors in renewable energy. They're slowly making the transition. Obviously, they got to mind their bottom line, but everyone's kind of doing it, and eventually it's only going to make sense. So, how close we get to that cliff, we'll see. But everyone's eventually going to make that turn, hopefully in time. So
hopefully,
hopefully. So with that being said, story number 2, a little hope there, story number 2, story number 3. Let's go ahead and talk about this. And Tel Aviv, obviously they have some amazing researchers there. They're some of the best. Longtime listeners of the show here know that Tel Aviv has a lot of not just tech startups, but cybersecurity as well. They're a hotbed for cybersecurity. But hey, they do other things as well. So let's talk about green energy, green energy.
Yep, absolutely. And a little warning up front. This is a very complex, geeky bio story, if you will, biotechnology,
so a lot of footnotes.
Bioscience story. And so I'm not going to profess to completely understand this, but I did want to highlight it because I think it's an encouraging development. So Tel Aviv University, of course, in Israel, a team from that university produces green hydrogen with over 90% efficiency. So there's so-called gray hydrogen, we'll talk about, and then green hydrogen. Well, the holy grail in the hydrogen world is green hydrogen. So we're not having to make it off of fossil fuels. This is a double win here because they're saying they've figured out a way to make green hydrogen with over 90% efficiency. That's why this headline just grabbed me. And I said, I've got to learn more, even if I don't fully understand it. Got this from the Jerusalem Post, and it's a really interesting story. Come out to the show notes. There's a wonderful picture of the team that developed this. It's really, really very encouraging story. So here we go. A team of researchers from Tel Aviv University recently announced the development of an innovative way to produce green hydrogen that is produced without polluting carbon dioxide emissions, but is still highly efficient. Now, today, hydrogen is, of course, we all know this. Hydrogen is used in various industrial processes to generate electricity, power vehicles, produce fertilizers, and more. And Ben and you and I know this from past shows. The automobile industry is, Toyota especially, really, really looking at hydrogen as well as a fuel source for future cars. But here's the problem. However, 95% of today's hydrogen is produced from coal or natural gas. And here's a horrifying factoid, emitting 9 to 12 tons of CO2 for every ton of hydrogen produced. What? As great as hydrogen fuel is, the emissions are just warm air and water vapor, right? That's great. But if it creates 12 tons of CO2 for every hydrogen produced when you have to make it out of coal or natural gas, it's like, so what?
the obvious thing there is that any hydrogen produced on scale is obviously going to be a byproduct, not the sole purpose and intent of creating hydrogen, Ralph. It's they're capturing hydrogen to sell to secondary markets as like a waste or a byproduct. So it could be more efficient, and I think that's what they're going to get into.
Exactly. So that's where this story comes into play. So a doctoral student on the Tel Aviv University team noted, quote, today, green hydrogen is produced primarily through electrolysis. And we mentioned before, primarily also from coal and natural gas. So again, today, green hydrogen is produced primarily through electrolysis, which requires precious and rare metals, such as platinum, along with water distillation, which makes the green hydrogen up to 15 times more expensive than the polluting gray versions. So he's comparing, and gray again means using coal or natural gas to produce hydrogen. All right. So the Tel Aviv University team, the team at the university wanted a radical alternative. So they used an enzyme found in microscopic organisms to create their green hydrogen. Now, warning, this is, as I said at the outset, a very bio-geeky research story, and I don't profess to fully understand it, but you can use the links in the show notes to dive deeper if you wish, but I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. Another doctoral student on the team noted hydrogen can be produced by enzymes in microscopic organisms, which receive their energy from a photosynthesis process. In the lab, we electrify those enzymes. That is, an electrode provides the energy instead of the sun to prompt the photosynthesis process, which in turn is creating the hydrogen. The Tel Aviv University team produced hydrogen using a water-based gel to attach an enzyme to the electrode and a biocatalyst. Over 90% of the electrons introduced into the system were deposited in the hydrogen without any secondary processes. That's the 90% efficiency reference. Mm-hmm. And by the way, a quick aside, a biocatalyst is a substance, pardon me if I could say it, biocatalyst is a substance such as an enzyme or hormone that initiates or increases the rate of a chemical reaction. Now, however, as the team notes, the challenge is that the enzyme generally, quote unquote, runs away from the electric charge when making hydrogen in the lab. That was a problem. A hydrogel the team developed, however, holds the enzyme in place. This is the mechanics of how they pulled this off. And again, folks, I know this is like you're going, what? According to the professor who oversaw the project, the material of the hydrogel itself is a known thing, meaning it's not new or fabricated by the team. But our innovation is to use it to produce hydrogen. He also noted, quote, we soaked the electrode in the gel, which contained an enzyme for producing hydrogen called hydrogenase. Hydrogenase is an enzyme that catalyzes the reduction of a particular substance by hydrogen. I know, folks, this is like mind melting. The gel holds the enzyme for a long time, even under the electric voltage, and makes it possible to produce hydrogen with great efficiency at environmental conditions favorable to the enzyme, for example, in salt water, in contrast to electrolysis, which is used in today's processes, which requires distilled water and precious metals and on and on and on. So, sorry, not precious metals, I digress. But again, this is very complex. Dive deeper if you want to. Come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes and go for it from there. But it's just an exciting idea of using enzymes and microscopic organisms to make hydrogen is something that would be so great if they can get this to scale and make it practical.
You did a good job at scratching the surface, because I have, so many more questions, and I think primarily among them is which organisms did they really use? Because we've had a lot of stories about using algae is I think a big one. Yes. If we could, I guess, Ralph, like there's such a big field coming up, and this is the trends part, between lab grown meat, between algae for fuel, between, this now, that we're going to have to figure out how to build these at scale, large bioreactors, as they call them, or just, big pots with giant soupy, organisms in it to produce stuff like that. That seems to be a future, something that the future is really going to have a lot of.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Story number 3. So that's story number 3. Story number 4, and we're going to talk a little bit about something that, judging by the numbers, probably affects someone in your family at some point.
Amen.
And breast cancer happens, so often, and time again, Ralph, the number one treatment, or the number one thing that determines how effective a treatment is detection. So story number 4 should be a big relief tool, or at least a big hope for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and by the way, folks, usually Ben and I end each Friday segment with something from the medical world. And it's so important to me personally. And this story really resonated with me because, Ben, to your point about everybody pretty much probably has somebody in their family or friends that breast cancer has impacted. My mother passed away at age 61 through complications that started with breast cancer. So this is something that was, really caught my attention. The headline here is Breakthrough Wearable Ultrasound Scanner Could Detect breast cancer earlier. And I got this from medicalexpress.com, and what medicalexpress.com, which is a wonderful website, by the way, they simply lifted a story and an announcement that was on MIT's website. So this is an Massachusetts Institute of Technology story, folks. So really, I love those guys. I can't believe I never get tired of hearing about what MIT's up to. Anyway, and if you have the show notes, you can see an image of this device they created. It's really interesting. Okay, a little bit of background here. When breast cancer is diagnosed in the early stages, the survival rate is nearly 100%. I think we all know that. However, for tumors detected in later stages, that rate drops to 25%. Oh, terrible problem. Breast tumors that develop in between regularly scheduled mammograms, known as interval cancers, account for 20 to 30% of all breast cancer cases. And these tumors tend to be more aggressive than those found during routine scans. So it's that interval, that time when you're not, checking it out. That's the problem. In hopes of, so here's the goal. In hopes of improving the overall survival rate of breast cancer patients, MIT researchers have designed a wearable ultrasound device that could allow people to detect tumors when they are still in the early stages. It could be valuable for patients at high risk of developing breast cancer in between routine mammograms. This is so cool. The device is a flexible patch that can be attached to a bra, allowing the wearer to move an ultrasound tracker along the patch and image the breast tissue, from different angles. In the new MIT study, the researchers showed that they could obtain ultrasound images with resolution comparable to that of ultrasound probes used in medical imaging centers. Whoa. Okay. Think of the layers of innovation here. A wearable scanning device with resolution comparable to that of ultrasound probes used in a medical imaging center. Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. So I was kind of looking at this and I was like, the mesh kind of thing that they printed for this device looked, it looks kind of futuristic, looks kind of cool. But I was like, what's really the purpose? And I guess looking at the image that you can see there on the video, they have the place to connect the ribbon in 6 different places. So I'm guessing that's really the point of it, is that you kind of get that full coverage of kind of the different scan points, instead of just saying, just put the ribbon in a bra. Like they're very specifically placed in that mesh. So, okay, makes sense.
It's so clever on so many levels. It's just mind blowing. But going to talk about the person who developed this. So it's a woman. Her name is Canan, Canan Dagdeviran. And in the show notes, we have a picture of her and all this good stuff. An associate professor in MIT's medical lab and the senior author of the study said, quote, "We changed the form factor of the ultrasound technology so that it can be used in your home. It's portable and easy to use and provides real-time, user-friendly monitoring of breast tissue." Bravo, Canan. I love it. To make her vision of a diagnostic bra a reality. So to make this a reality, Dagdeviran designed a miniaturized ultrasound scanner that could allow the user to perform imaging at any time. Stop for a second. It sort of reminds me, as you know, I'm a heart patient, had a quintuple bypass in 2011 and all that. Fine. I have a at-home blood pressure cuff that I can put on and periodically check my blood pressure and so forth and report it to my cardiologist. Well, this is like saying, hey, with this device, women could periodically do a breast exam and send super high grade images to their physician and in between official mammograms. I mean, this is the point.
And I know that we've mentioned on the show before, but during the pandemic, the hospital resources were stretched super thin.
Right.
A lot of people skipped their regular, just
Good point.
COVID's raging, Ralph. You don't want to go into the doctor's office where all the COVID patients are,
Yes.
and they skipped all their routine stuff. And then after COVID, we found that there was a spike in cancer detection. So something at home to bring another innovation into the conversation. Cologuard, you've probably seen the commercials for them. They do a very necessary job. Ralph, like imagine like a Cologuard, they send you the sample kit to your home. Imagine your doctor would send this to your home, you'd use it, and then you would return the device. Something like that, and it would be very effective and helpful.
Yeah, it's just really cool. So a little bit more here. The scanner is based on the same kind of ultrasound technology used in medical imaging centers, but incorporates a novel piezoelectric material that allowed the researchers to miniaturize the ultrasound scanner. Okay, time out. What is a piezoelectric material? Piezoelectric materials are the materials that can produce electric energy upon application of mechanical stress. A commonly known piezoelectric material is quartz, okay? So to make the device wearable, the researchers designed a flexible, so that's a key, flexible 3D printed patch, which you've shown in the video right now, which has honeycomb-like openings. Now, using magnets, this patch can be attached to a bra that has openings that allow the ultrasound scanner to contact the skin. The ultrasound scanner fits inside a small tracker that can be moved to 6 different positions, allowing the entire this 6 positions allows the entire breast to be imaged. The scanner can also be rotated to take images from different angles and does not require any special expertise to operate. Ta-da! Love it. Salute to MIT.
Yeah, no, the form factor looks super simple. I mean, the fact that it's like we're looking at the entire device, Ralph, it's not connected to a giant magnetic imaging machine.
Right.
There's not a laptop that you need to hook it up to. It's all self-contained, I think makes this just so important. Obviously, this isn't going to be something included in first aid kits, but portable is good. Portable and honestly, Ralph, looks a little cost effective. So hey, maybe catch all that stuff beforehand. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the 4 stories. That's kind of our mission here. But Ralph, if people go to the show notes, they're going to find a little something else. So just talk real quick about honorable mentions.
We're going to entice you to come out to computeramerica.com and get today's show notes, because at the end, there's so many great stories. I think we started last week. I'm going to put in some honorable mentions. We're not going to talk about it right now. You can come out and check it out. One is an electric cruise ship with gigantic solar sails is set to launch in 2030. Wow. Got to check that out. That's pretty interesting. How about this one? This one I personally really relate to. Scientists at a London-based company are perfecting a synthetic alcohol. The researchers claim it will deliver the pleasurable side effects of the drug without the negative ones, aka hangover. Sign me up, folks. Thank you, Brits. That's wonderful. And then another one. Last week we talked about self-healing metal.
Yeah.
This is self-healing solar panels. So come on, get the show notes, check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. So all of them are a lot of fun. And again, not saying that the news that Ralph doesn't cover isn't important, but we just want to give you a dose. Just a nice, fun way to take your Friday out on a high note. So Ralph, I want to thank you so much. You do a great job every single time. Great stories. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more, computeramerica.com, or of course, we'll have a link to Ralph's site if you want a more Ralph-focused experience there. So until next time, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Do something fun. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.